Welcome back to Light Talk, where the paranormal and the supernatural is a part of our everyday lives. I am so excited to have our guest on the show tonight. He is a returning guest. So, welcome back, Michael Kopf. How are ya?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me back.
Absolutely anytime. You're awesome to have all these stories to share, and I'm excited to get started. So, let's do this.
Yeah, and I love how where the topic's going. I feel like I actually nailed a good backdrop for this.
Yeah, it's going to be good. I think it's a pretty sharp spark we've got going. Wink, wink.
Yeah, so Dane and I were talking before we got started, and one of the topics that we both were like, yeah, it'd be fun to talk about is not your normal paranormal topic. It is paranormal, but at the same time, it's not. And that is, I am going to share with you all what I am going through with the loss of my mom. So, this episode is kind of going to be a little bit of a revelation about death. And many of you know from watching these episodes with Dana, and if you're a fan of my shows, I come from the metaphysics background. So right there, you can already tell I have a different viewpoint of things. And so I'm going to share with you all my viewpoint of death and how it's impacting me right now. And I also want to take a quick second and say, I know it looks like I'm really connected and strong and, keeping it together right now. And I am. It's a good moment right now, but I do have tearful moments. I do get emotional still at times, but I am going to do my best to get through this. And hopefully, at the end of this, some of you may have different thoughts about what death is. And if not, well, enjoy your viewpoint. I'm just here to share mine, and so don't take anything I'm about to say as the be all end all of anything. I'm not an expert on it, but this is what I've gone through. And so in metaphysics, death is viewed as a transformation. You are going from one stage of existence to another. There is no end. It's not a finality. So, in that aspect, in the loss of my father in 2023 and the loss of my mother last month and on April 22nd, I am dealing with the loss of an aspect of my parents. And what I mean by that, because I know that term aspect gets thrown around a lot, but in my definition use today, I'm talking about the physicality aspect. I'm mourning the physicality of having both of my parents around. They're still around in energy. I can still hear their voices. I can still communicate with them through mediums or through my own clairvoyant skills that I have. And so that part of losing them is not being mourned because I haven't lost them. So, in that aspect, it makes the view and the emotional, gut wrenching trauma of death a little bit more manageable because I'm missing getting up and like getting a hug from my parents or seeing their smile face, physically in front of me. That's what I'm missing. That's what I'm mourning. Them themselves, they are not gone. And so there's nothing to mourn there. There's not a death there. So this is what I mean by it's a different view of death is they're not gone, they're not dead, but they're not here on the physical earth realm. That is what I'm mourning. And so it's different. It's not a finality. There is no when you die, that's it. Nothing, nothing afterwards. I am a firm believer through many experiences of my own and experiences with my mom and my dad being on the other side that life continues. It's not over just because we're not physically here on the earth realm. And so that is one thing that I wanted to share with you all because it's something I'm going through right now and it's hard to wake up and, you're get into a routine of seeing someone and you're not able to see them in the physical form, and that is tough and it is emotional. But in knowing they're not gone, that they're in a better place, they're in energy, they're pain free, they're not suffering anymore, they're able to go and do whatever they want to do. That's something to celebrate. And so that's what I do is I celebrate their freedom of being able to exist in a new way and in a way that I have been able to touch upon here. They're able to do it full time. And so I'm kind of a little jealous a little bit about that, but in a good way, not the toxic way.
Right. I'm the same
But
way with that, Mike. I'm the same way. When my mom passed, it was it was such a joyful time for me. I mean, it may sound rude, it might be sounding selfish or what, but I haven't cried since for my mom, because I know she's in a better place. I know things are better for her. I know she's doing what she always wanted to do. I know she's doing all of that. So I see your point. I do miss her when we all get together. I do miss not seeing her physical body, but I know she's there with us. I know that she's celebrating with us every time we get together. I know that she's out riding her horses like she's always wanted. I know she's out having a joyous time and she's always with us. She's always with us. So I see where
right,
you're at.
and when I was doing hospice volunteering with my parents, it would always like sicken me a little bit inside that I would hear people say stuff like, "Oh, I'm not worthy to die because I'm not going to go, to heaven." And I'm like, "Well, who told you that?" And they're like, "Well, because I've done this and this, I'm not going to be worthy." And I'm like, "Well, who told you that?" And I knew in my head, in my heart, who told them that.
Mhm.
And I'm sorry, that is totally unethical that they're doing that and immoral, but that's what they do because they're in a position of selling fear and they're into fear mongering to control people. Where in the metaphysics, we're about the freedom of the soul and the freedom of the person. And so it kind of made me sick to my stomach hearing that. And I had the fortunate thing of when I started my Reiki practice that I did for like a few months and then retired from it because it wasn't what I envisioned. I had got a reverend's license with my parents, and so after 2.5 year study of it, it wasn't one of those 5 minutes on the internet kind of deals. I mean, I did real work behind it and wrote two sermons that I never presented, but they were well thought out and written and approved, and so I got my license. I would say to the people that I was with and go, what if I told you you were worthy? What if I told you you were welcomed there? And they would say, well, who's authority? And I'd say, well, I am a reverend. And their faces would light up. And they would be like, really? I am? I'm like, yeah. You have nothing to fear going to this place. You are going to be welcomed by family. You're going to be welcomed by everyone. There is nothing to fear about dying. And their faces would light up, and I would see like their spark like ignite within them. And sure enough, within a week or less, they would pass on. And it's the guilt and everything that they're told, you're not worthy, that fear keeps them from going. And so they're suffering in these homes. And I wish I could shake everybody and just say, knock it off. Death is not something to fear. Stop making it something to fear. It's not a finite ending. It's not you're going to be judged by someone, your worth over your deeds. But at the same time, I also, don't want people to go and say, well, if that's the case, I can go commit any crime I want and I'm going to go wherever. It's like, no, that's not what I'm saying.
Right.
You are you you judge yourself, and let's be totally honest. Who is the better judge and the more harsher judge than yourself? Because I know from my own experience, even now, being in the living, that I am my worst critic. I can't
Mhm.
watch shows that I do or a lot of interviews that I do. I can't go back and watch them because I will nitpick and find every fault in them. And I will get myself in a mind trap of, I totally could have done better. God, why was I repeating this topic and beating it like a dead horse? Why was I, wearing that outfit? Why did I
Mhm.
have that posture? Numerous things that I could critique
Mhm.
instead of seeing the beauty of what unfolded. And so that's where I had that conscious knowledge of this is who I am and this is what I do. Therefore, I make it the consciousness of not watching and trusting and knowing everything is perfect as it is. The information's being delivered. Great.
Yep,
I don't
I'm the
need
same
to
way.
go back and fine tune anything. It's being delivered, divine timing,
Mhm.
divine way. And I just, I hope in my heart, everyone that watches this, whether you're metaphysical, paranormal, normal, muggle, whatever, you want to claim to be, I want you in your heart to know you are your own judge, you are your own critic, and if you were to leave this world and you feel you're leaving it in a great way and leaving a great legacy behind, you've done a great job. If you're leaving it and going, well, I caused a lot of pain, I caused a lot of hurt in my wake, you might want to rethink your lifestyle and go, maybe, start making amends. Maybe make some changes.
Mhm.
Or if that's what you want to be it. But just be aware, you're gonna see it. And the one golden rule that I always held to was it's a two-parter. First part is if I can go to sleep and feel I've done everything to the best of my ability in this day, I sleep and wake up the next day. I will wake up thinking I had a great day yesterday, no matter what happened. I could have had the worst trauma, but because I woke up and slept the night off, I'm like starting afresh, and I did my best with that day. No regrets. Second thing, I do my best to leave no pain and no wake behind me because I'm a firm believer of the metaphysical principle, whether it's real or not. When you go into life review, you will feel not only the trauma and the events for yourself, but you're going to feel how it impacted everybody around you. And so that factor keeps me from kind of sometimes lashing out and going and doing really stupid things because I'm like, yeah, it's one thing to say, I feel for myself what that, you know, damage did and be like, I'm okay with that. I can fix that. Damaging someone else, that's not cool and that's not easy to fix. And that may not be fixable. So therefore, I'm like, I don't want that in my legacy or my history. So I do my best to keep everything in check. And am I perfect? No. Does it happen? Yes, but I do my best to mitigate it and keep it from spreading or apologizing for it and owning my part. And that's another thing people need to understand. And I've learned, and I know Dana and I were talking about tangents, and here comes one. When we are in arguments or we are in situations where, fights or somebody gets hurt, we sit there and we take responsibility for the whole and are like, I caused this, I did this. And that's partly true. And I'm using the word partly very carefully because I've come to learn that every situation, every event, every fight has two sides. You're responsible for your side. You can fix and make amends on your side, and it doesn't matter what the other side does. That is on that person. You are not in control of that person and how they react or they, accept or not accept anything. You are totally free and clear of that. Owning your part and taking responsibility of your part is your mission and your responsibility. And when you do that, that's where the true forgiveness and freedom comes from because you will learn, you will change, you will adapt, and you're not going to take on the impossible mission of saying, hey, I'm gonna make this entire situation whole and healed because that will never happen. That person has to heal on their own, and you can't do it for them. And so that is something I've come to learn, and I've gained a great, like, almost want to say lightness to my life because it lifted burdens off of me because I was taking on stuff that wasn't mine because I was a small part of it. And I was thinking I had this power, I had this energy, I can fix anything. And realizing I can have all the power in the world, but I cannot fix everything. I cannot fix what other people are working on. I can only fix me. That's the true wisdom of the power.
Yeah, yeah. And along with that is everything that we do is recorded. So when we go to our life review, like you're saying, we're gonna go through everything that we said and how it reacted to us and to others, and kind of that wake that went out. I mean, we're going to be seeing all of that. We're going to be feeling what we felt and they felt and all of that. And so we do want to try to keep it on a good, neutral, um, clear, fresh, authentic, all of that throughout our lives because everything's being recorded. And we don't want to go into life review with that regret of doing that. And on top of that, that's our lesson. If we do go to our life review, that's our lesson. So that's where we'll learn a lot of what we need to do in the next life. So
Right.
yeah.
And so, and the fact that whether you believe in past lives or not, or deja vu or not, it's there, it's around, and it's a reality, whether you can choose to accept or deny it, but it's always there. So no matter what you really decide to believe or not believe in this world, you're going to be reborn in a new way and with new foresight and new knowledge. So don't, feel like, oh, because we're saying this, you have to believe in past lives or you have to believe in reincarnation. No, you don't. It'll still happen for you, but it doesn't mean you have to believe it to make it happen. And there's no like golden door that says, oh, since you believed, your next life is going to be 10 times greater and more bountiful, and you're going to have so much more happiness than the non-believer. No, the afterlife doesn't work that way.
Mhm.
How the afterlife works, I've come to understand from listening to people about their experiences and listening to mediums, listening to myself, my experiences. The afterlife is what you make of it. So if you imagine pearly gates and you're going to be it with the host of angels and you're going to be on the clouds looking down on the earth, by all means, that's exactly what you're going to get, and you're welcome to it. And if you feel like, okay, I made some mistakes, so I need to go somewhere and do some penance and work my way towards, the pearly gates, by all means, you're going to get that, and more power to you. And if you, decide, well, there is no real afterlife, I'm not gonna go anywhere, I'll just be, then that'll be what happens for you, and you'll be reborn somewhere or right away, or you may be in a place of what some people call the source energy and learn what you need to learn there and come back and share with other people or not share it and relearn new lessons and start over the cycles. But life, we call them life cycles, and they're not life cycles of being born, aging, and dying. That's not the cycle. That's just a part of the cycle. The cycle is actually being born, growing up, aging, dying, being reborn, aging, dying, being reborn. That's the cycle. And the cycle ends when you decide, I've learned enough. My soul has learned enough of the lessons. We get what we need, and you can go on to a life somewhere else, or you can return to source. And if you feel like you've been cut short in a life and you have things to make amends for and need to correct before you go, that is totally possible too, that you can connect with mediums and solve a crime, the crime of your death and bring justice or, bring justice to your loved ones. So, if the law doesn't want to go there, remember law here, earthly law is man's law. The law on the other side in the afterlife, that's divine law, universal law. Much different. Much different.
Yeah,
And
I
believe me,
agree.
I want all my judgments done here, not under universal law. I don't want to be in universal court over anything. But that's just my opinion. Solve it
Right.
here while you can. Don't take it with you into the next, because, yeah. And a way to look at that, for me, was I had a teacher who was teaching me, trying to teach me wisdom, and I wasn't really getting it then, but I get it now, is having awareness and being wise are two different things. And the example she gave me was you're walking down the street and you see a kid playing ball in the front yard. The ball rolls into the street. You see a car coming, you race over, you grab the kid, he doesn't get hit by the car, and I know a lot of you are thinking, well, that's a great lesson. The kid's alive, big, way to go. But there's a second part to the story, and the second part of the story is a week or two later, he's playing a ball near railroad tracks and a train hits him. Which would have been the better death? Because his lesson was to learn how he died by not being aware of his surroundings. So, which was the better death? Which was more humane? The car or the train? And I had to sit there for a moment and I was like, well, damn, the car would be a lot better way to go, because if you had a chance of coming back, you could come back from a car hitting you. Train, you ain't coming back. There's nothing to come back to. Your body's gone. And they were like, exactly. So you robbed that kid of learning his lessons in the way that he needed to. So now when I go in through life, I look at, where do I jump in? Where do I put my energy to? And where do I sit back and watch? And I know it seems strange to say, I could watch someone being, in my path being hurt, but I have to look at it not from the example of the earth law of saying, oh yeah, someone's being hurt. By all means, let's stop that. That's not right. Let's get involved. We have the strength. We can do something. You have to look at a universal law of, is that person learning something by this? If they are, isn't it the better, stronger person that lets them learn it in the way that they designed for themselves and not putting a judgment on their lesson? And so that's, something that I deal with. And I know this is like seeming strange talking about with death and the afterlife and everything, but where I'm going with it is if you look at the end of your time and you want to hold to the church or hold to society and go, death is painful, death is suffering, death is, this termination and it's a complete ending. And if that's what you truly want, by all means, more power to you. And you can live through that. And, more power to you if that's what you want to live through. But to me, I take much more comfort in knowing when death comes for me, I'm just going to transition into an energy form and I'm not going to disappear. I'm not going to end. I'm just taking a whole new form and a whole new journey.
Mhm.
And to me, that sounds a hell of a lot more exciting, pardon my language, than suffering and being miserable and going that way. So that's what I'm trying to bring awareness to, is to look at your life and decide, one, how am I living my life? Two, what life am I leaving behind, with everyone around me? And thirdly, what way do I want to go? You are a complete choice of all of it. There is nothing that's out of your control in these scenarios. As much as we like to think there's nature in its course running is out of our control, it's actually kind of still in our control. We determine our environment. We can determine what happens around us. May not seem like it sometimes, but it's true. And so, bottom line is, how do you want to go? Do you want to go feeling miserable? Then, do that. But if you realize there's a choice and you don't have to go miserably, don't you like that better, having an option than having only one choice?
Yeah. Yeah. You still have me thinking about this car thing. Car or
I
the
know.
train, it's like, what do you do? I mean, because for me, the first instinct would be to save the child, right? From
Right.
going out in the street. You want to save him and maybe explain to him. But then I look at it in bugs. I transform that story into a bug. So if a bug is crawling, a spider or some any kind of little bug is crawling, a worm crawling around, and you're like, oh, well, let me save you. Let me take you from here and move you to over here. We just took that right away from that bug and put it where we think that bug needs to go instead of letting it just kind of go and just kind of step around it so you don't step on it, step around it. So it's like, do you help the bug or the child? Or do you let them keep going and get stepped on by somebody else? I don't know. That's how
Right.
I'm like.
And
So I saw it.
well, and in that scenario, though, you deciding to let the bug go and not step on it, you made the choice of letting it have the freedom to choose its own path. And if somebody else comes up and steps on him and squishes him, well, that's on that person, not you. It's not on you that you left him there to make that choice. That's on the other person who chose to step on when they could have walked around. So that's the moral of the story is, you are responsible for your choices and they're responsible for their choices and the bug or kid is responsible for his choice. You are not responsible for the kid or the person who squashed.
Mm,
That's what she was trying to relate is you're responsible for your part. Did you interfere? No. Good for you. Could you have did you want to interfere? Well, maybe, you had you started leaning over and then you were like, "No, I better not." And you walked on. Nothing wrong with that. You could have picked up the bug and put him right back where he was and been like, "There's nothing wrong with that either." And you could have picked him up and moved him over, a couple of inches closer. Still nothing wrong with. They're all choices. What we're saying is you're responsible for the choice you make. They're responsible for the choice they make regarding what you do and what they were doing to start with. So you are in no terms responsible whatever happens after that incident or event. Whatever happens, happens. That is out of your hands. What happens for you is your responsibility. And seeing the bug get squashed, and you start to go, well, he wouldn't have been squished if I moved him over there. No, that's true. But how do we know lying in the grass isn't the worm or the bug's predator waiting for him to get there and pounce? So he was doomed whether he made it or didn't make it. But we're judging that he's doomed because something was there to pounce and eat him or kill him, and something, someone steps on him or you step on him. It's you could say he's doomed either way, or he was free either way because he made the choice to start that journey to cross over the walkway. He made the choice knowing it's heavy traffic time because they're aware. They can feel the vibration, so they know when it's a good time to start and when it's not. They can
yeah.
feel what's around. So when you look at it that way, wow, there's so many factors going on in this story that you need to be aware of in every action that it makes you step back and go, whoa, we are processing way more than we realize in
Yeah.
every occurrence in life that we have because all these awarenesses I'm talking about relating to this bug or kid happen in everyday life, happen at
All day
work,
long.
happen at home.
Yeah.
We just don't pay attention to them because we're only looking at part A, part B. Part A being like arriving home, part B got into a fight. I don't know why with someone. I just walked in the door and argument started. Don't know what's going on. And part C is arguments over. We resolved it. Okay. But part A, B, and C is just a small actual occurrence of a much bigger picture. And if we looked at the bigger picture, then, decisions change and viewpoints change. And an example is, say, in part A, you left work, you had a rough day, so you're kind of grumpy, and you're taking that home with you. You walk in the door, that person doesn't know you had a rough day. They had a rough day. You don't know they had a rough day. What happens? The two of you collide. Both are feeling, I need to be heard and I need sympathy. You're not giving it. You're not listening. Fights erupt. Then you say, well, we didn't really communicate. You come to a resolution, problem solved, and you move on. Think, okay, no big deal. Everything, we say we'll do better, but sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. We're not perfect beings. We're learning.
Yeah.
We're having human experiences, but we need to take and look at everything in a whole of what and in that moment and going, what am I bringing to this? What are they bringing to this? And going, is this where we want to be? And if you go, no, and you go, hey, I know you're having a bad day. I had a really bad day. Can I want to hear about your day, but can you give me like 30 seconds to clear myself of my bad day so I don't bring it to you? Imagine how much different the world would be of owning your part of things before they become major events or major incidents. And so that's the gift that comes from, being in the paranormal world and being in the unexplained phenomenon and, looking at death and the afterlife is you are given these glimpses into, wow, this is what's happening. This is not what I thought it was going to be like. This is not at all this or that. It's something else. And then you can say, well, now that I have this awareness, where does this awareness work elsewhere in life? And it starts to change you. You start to morph and you start to become something else. And the people will either join you with on that journey that are meant to join you, and if they're not, and they were considered just catalysts to bring about this change, you're going to part ways. But the difference is when you part ways, if you're coming from a place of love and awareness, you're going to be like, we did the best we could. And I know I'm in this place now, and you are not ready for that. And I respect that and understand that. And I'm not forcing you to join me here where I am now. And, you know, time apart. Maybe, when you find yourself, if that's what you need to do to, figure out how compatible we truly are now, we'll revisit it. And you're at choice to do that, or you're at choice to say, let's part ways before this gets really ugly. And I think when it comes to when I hear about divorces where they're like really nasty, nasty, like drawn out divorces, I feel like it's both have are changing so fast and so much that they're rubbing against each other and they're trying to get free, but they can't get free because each are trying to do what they want and they're not caring about the other person and seeing the other person. And so there's this collision, a crash, and it becomes messy. And what happens? You get, what do you call those people? Mediators. And
Mm.
these poor people, I feel such sympathy for the mediators because they have to listen to one side dumping everything about the situation, and then they have to go and listen to the other side dump their perspective of the whole situation and have to navigate this and figure out where there's commonality that they can grow on and get resolution, and where there's utter differences and there is no resolution and decide complete separation. But those people are like, to me, it what they do their jobs right. And by right, I mean they listen and truly are doing the best for each other and they're not mediating, and secretly going, hey, I'm really good friends with party A, so we're really going to stick it to party B. Because I feel like that happens because we do have corruption and biases that form in life. It's impossible really not to. But, we just have to look at what is going on and find favorable grounds and be ourselves. And whatever unfolds around us will unfold whether we are 100% present or we're not present. It's going to unfold however. But the awareness that you get from, watching death and deciding, how you want your life to be will impact that unfolding.
Yeah.
Have no doubt about that. And so if it unfolds the way you want it to, great, you're in total alignment. Both parties are. If it unfolds in a way that you were not expecting and didn't want, well, that's because somebody was out of alignment in that moment and the unfolding picked it up and was like, hey, we're not in alignment. So guess what? Not getting what you want in the way you want. But in the end, it's a great thing because everybody's free to go and live their lives. Now, the toxic part of it is if both parties separate and use their newfound freedom to attack each other and keep going at each other. And it's like, why didn't you just stay married if you just wanted to fight each other all the time? You could have just done it that way. And there was no point in paying for this separation and going through that. You wanted to be apart, so be apart. You
Yeah.
can, but if you're on friendly terms, be friendly. Don't sit there and be like, well, we parted on good terms, but I'm going to make sure he doesn't marry this person and their life gets better, or I'm going to make sure she doesn't get this job that she's really wanting and her life gets better. That's not
Yeah.
separating in alignment. And that's not letting the unfolding happen. And that's where I feel like the awareness of your world in totality starts breaking down and you lose it because you get caught back up in the games that are played here on the earth realm. And this is a school, really. I mean, in metaphysics, the earth is a school. And I think that's the best description because we're all learning. And when you graduate, you're either here going on to the next school level or you go to another realm and you continue your studies there. But death, I hope everybody starts to realize, is not this horrible, scary thing. And I actually went and picked up my mom's ashes today and had them put in an urn. And we were talking about, what to do with the ashes. You can display them, you can bury them, you can, spread them in a legal way. Found out that's the thing that you can legally spread ashes some places, not
Mhm.
legally other places. So do make
Right.
sure you do it legally. But I looked at him and I said, my mom has my dad's ashes next to her, and he goes, "Well, this is your dad's." And it had his name stickered on the back, and so I started laughing and going, "God, my mom thinks she's been laying next to my dad for 3 years, and he's not there. The ashes weren't there." And I looked, and they actually did put the ash, so the ashes were put in the wrong one.
Oh no.
My mom had my dad put in hers, and she apparently was supposed to go in his. But so he gave me two, one for each of them, so that I could make sure had their ashes, there, for my sincerity and my, wanting of having, something to remember them and not have the big urn,
Right.
in my sleeping space. I can have these little things. I think it says like peacefully love or something, and had this little memento, and it's got a small ash in it. But I looked at them and I said, the interesting thing, we're sitting here talking about, do we spread the ashes? Do we bury them? When in true actuality, they're not those ashes. They're not in the ashes. They're not in the urn. That's not them anymore. They are this energy that's out in the world now. So whether we spread the ashes, bury them, display them, they don't care. We're the ones that are sitting there and going, "Oh, here's, mom," or "Here's dad." Well, in actuality, no, that's just ash. Because my parents were cremated, so that's why I'm using that as the example. Another example I can share is my great aunt. Her husband was buried in the ground. She
Mhm.
would call after every storm the caretakers of the cemetery and say, "Is there a branch crushing my husband? Because he's buried in the ground there." She literally had the belief if a tree limb fell and was laying on his gravesite, he was being crushed by that tree.
Oh wow.
And I was like, how can you think that? It just his body is in the ground, but he's not in the ground. He's not being crushed. He's probably looking at you and going, "Do you realize how weird and not normal that sentence sounds? This branch is crushing me when I'm dead in your world.
Uh-huh.
What?"
Yeah.
And I would sit there and I'd be like, after hearing this, I would just roll my eyes and be like, "Oh my God, how do people really think like this?" But
I
it's
don't
true, people do. They
yeah,
really,
I have a weird thing about cemeteries. I have a hard time walking around cemeteries because kind of the same thing, even though I know all this, it's just I don't want to be walking on top of them, you know? So I have this weird thing when I'm walking around, but yeah, I get it, you know. I It's weird to think, but yeah, I do have that same kind of don't step on the grave, you
Well,
know,
but to me, that you're
weird.
not thinking you're stepping on that person. That's more of a respect thing because you wouldn't want someone stepping on you and, when you're sleeping somewhere, we'll use that term. If you're sleeping in the ground, you don't want someone to step on you. That's just courtesy. And so I do the same thing when I'm in a cemetery. If I'm walking and I realize without knowing I had stepped on someone, I will look at the nameplate and I'm so sorry I stepped on you. I didn't realize you were here. And so it's like, yeah, I'll apologize for it and move on and, continue what I'm doing and acknowledge that I did it. But I think it's more of a courtesy to them than thinking they're there in the ground and I
Yeah,
just walked on you. It's like, yeah, I don't think that's what I was thinking, and I kind of feel confident that's not what you're thinking. But
you're
there are
probably right.
people who will really think that because I believe this stems from a myth that comes from religion of the rapture, that the dead will rise and everybody will rise when Christ returns and it's everyone goes into heaven.
Mm.
Well, I hate to tell y'all, but the rapture doesn't wait for someone. As soon as you leave your body, you are done and off. You're not sitting in this grave twiddling your fingers and thumbs and going, God, I hope I make it this time. I hope, I mean, I died in 1712. I'm still waiting. I hope it's coming soon because there's not going to be much left of me here to rapture if, we don't step it up and, hurry. But I'll do my best to, keep myself together because, I mean, let's be honest, 1600, 1000. 400 AD, we dig these people up. Chances are you got an empty box if you even have a box. There's nothing
Right.
there. What happened to those people? Did they ascend and, go through the rapture, so to speak, or what? And, and so that's where I say, we gotta be mindful that some things that, we are led to believe sound good for faith, but don't actually work in reality. And a prime example of this is we had a bird when I was growing up. We buried it in our backyard in a shoebox. Well, we all forgot where we buried the bird, and years later, or probably a year later or a month later, we went to dig up the area to put a plant in, and we found the shoebox. No trace of the bird whatsoever. Now, did the bird get sucked into the ground and, become worm food? Well, considering the shoebox was intact, I would say no. But where then did it go? Because the shoebox was completely empty. There was no dust, no nothing. It
Oh,
was
wow.
just empty. And so
Empty
that,
tomb.
yeah, and so that got me thinking, like, if a bird can disappear from a shoebox underground to a new life, why can't a human? So all these cemeteries we're going to, and all these, bodies that are there or not there, we're not, being rude and walking on them. It's more of a mentality thing. They're not there. And there is kind of a freedom of knowing you're not going to be stuck in the ground if you decide to be buried. You're not
Mhm.
going to be stuck in this awful form if you decide to be cremated. No matter what you decide your transition method is going to be, you're not going to be there to experience the aftermath of it. You are going to be free and clear, pure energy, pure. It's like I laugh because I want to say, like, you would get this being in Colorado. You're going to be pure as the driven white snow.
Yeah.
But you're going into it, though, how you're going into it impacts how quickly your transition is. And what I mean by this is, irregardless if you are afraid or in a positive frame set for it, you're going into life review. You're not getting around it. You're going to experience it. Sorry, it's part of the cycle. You learn, you share your wisdom, your soul memorizes and embodies that wisdom into itself, and then you're born again. If, on another world, or as a dog that's someone's pet, or a stray, or a cow, whatever you are called to be reborn as. Think about this part of it, though. How interesting is it that we are living right now as human beings having human experiences can decide at the end of this experience, I now want to experience what it's like for another creature, another being. How cool is it that we have that choice and that we don't sit there and go and be well, I'm a white man, or I'm a, whatever color skin you want to have right now, and go, I'm laying in the ground because I gotta wait for the Messiah or the God that I believe in to come and lift me up, and so I'm gonna be just laying here, just sleeping my time off, and so I'll be well rested for what's coming next. Doesn't that kind of sound boring to think you're just sleeping in the ground until it's time to go somewhere and you're going everybody at once? Wouldn't you rather sit there and go, well, my time here is done. Time to go share what I've learned. And, you know, I wonder what it's like to swim in the ocean like a dolphin. Let's do that. And
Yeah.
come back as a dolphin. Or I wonder what it's like to soar through the sky like an eagle and have to peck my face into a rock on a mountain to keep my beak healthy. And apparently that must not hurt because they do it. I mean, as a human, I'm not going to smash my face into a rock to keep something healthy. So, does that hurt or not? I don't know. Let's find out and go
Let's
decide to
find
be
out.
an eagle. Or, I took great care of my dogs, and I wonder, how much do they really are aware and how much did they really appreciate? Well, let me be born as a dog to, a loving family. And my personal favorite that I like to judge myself is If you were a crappy dog owner who abused the dogs, may you be reborn as a dog who gets abused, and you get to feel it and experience it. And think twice maybe next time you have the opportunity to be in that role. But that's my own
Yeah.
personal judgment bias on that part.
No, I think of that too. I it's kind of a weird thing that I think of. I go into like the psychological side of things. So I I sometimes have this thought process. It's kind of off, but kind of morbid. But I want to go peacefully, like most people do, right? But at the same time, it's like I also kind of sit there as what is going through the mind of somebody that's sitting here abusing somebody and torturing them and doing all this unnecessary, horrible things. What is going through their mind? Why are they? Why do they enjoy this? Why do they do? Why? I do a lot of the whys. Why? So I kind of wonder if that may be something I go into in my next life because I have all these questions about it. Why would they feel like that? Why would they feel like, why would they do that? What would make them do that? Just all these questions. So I wonder if I may come back as some sort of murderer or some sort of abuser or something like that, just because I have that questioning, you know? So I may have to go through those lessons just to like learn it, learn
Yeah,
why.
that actually makes more sense than you realize because when you look at the very essence of our existences, we have contracts that have been made, and so a lot of contracts unfold, and there's two parties involved. Well, the thing that people don't realize is, let's say you have a contract to where you have a violent death because you've never experienced a violent death. So you want to know what it's like. Well, how can you do that? You got to have someone commit the violent act. So there's a soul that has the best light, the best energy, and they go, you know what? I'll do that for you. I love your soul so much that I will go and enter this world and become this horrible person, and I will commit this act so that you can learn this lesson. Our paths will cross when they're meant to, and this will, I'll help you unfold this, and then, we're done. Well, we're born and we don't know of these contracts. We forget about these contracts. And I think there's a reason we forget about these contracts so that when this violent act happens, the person doesn't sit there and go, "Oh, thank you for doing this for me," and because then it kind of takes the violence out of it. It's
Yeah,
not a violent act now, it's a loving act. And so, therefore, it's like, yeah, we have our memories erased of these contracts so we can truly experience what we're meant to experience. And that's
exactly.
why it's kind of hard to judge, people who kill people as being evil people because we don't know what they were contracted to do in this life. That may be a situation of there was somebody who wanted a violent death and someone who, like you're saying, has all these questions about being a violent person. What is it like? Well, both of you get to learn these lessons by being put together and having your paths cross in this moment. And I think what comes of it is the realization when, because sometimes violent acts start, but they don't finish. And I think, in my opinion, an experience is what happens is you get a glimmer of that contract and you're like, wait a minute, I don't need to learn this violent death now. I get it through this method. And so the violent death gets averted. Something intervenes and you still have the act, but it doesn't result in the same result. And that's why there are people who I think escape these violent deaths and survive against all odds is they realized something and didn't need that lesson. So they're brought back to finish and learn the other lessons that they needed to learn. And I know that seems kind of strange to say because if they were dead, there would be no other lessons. But we don't know what we don't understand is if you're, say, what we experience as near death experiences where you're dead, you're looking at things, they can say, yeah, I realized this, and I feel like there's so much more now that I could learn because I no longer have this driving things. They they can look and go, well, your body's not that bad. We can patch it up for you, and you can go learn one, two, three of these things. Do you really want to go back? And they're like, yeah, that's why they survive and have stuff to live for, and they're changed because their contracts change. And the person who, it could also be on the flip side is we'll take you as the example, of you saying you want to be a violent killer and you go to do the act and you go, wait a minute, I get it now. I don't have to complete this act. I've learned what I need to learn, and you'll drop whatever weapon you have and say, "Hey, go. You're gone." And whatever happens to that person isn't up to you anymore. They could go get killed by somebody else and have their experience, but you've learned your lesson, so therefore you are nullified in that contract. It's almost like I would say, view it as Mission Impossible. Your mission, you chose to accept was to learn this lesson. Mission accomplished, as Ethan Hunt would say. He said it once in a movie, so don't argue with me. He would say it. And you don't have to do the deed. You're free and clear of it. You walk away. You are not violating any universal laws or any laws.
And that just makes the full complete circle from the child going across the street.
Right.
Yeah. Wow. All right.
And so, yeah. And so, I, I'll share with you all. I'm writing a book currently on death. So you can make a note. This is May 6th. So it hasn't come out yet. I just started working on it, but I'm working on writing a book, sharing my viewpoints of death and what I've learned from the deaths that I've experienced in my life and how they've impacted me and shaped my viewpoints. And one of the interesting thing is I kept wanting to say, after, as we would say in earth terms, you know, 4,000 plus years of being in existence. Although I find that odd since we have tribes that are like 10,000 BC, but needless to say, we'll go with 3,000, years of existence and knowledge. We've never been able to identify and define death. Well, I took three different sources that are mainstream sources and was like, well, here's the definition. And I'm looking at the definition, and some of them are like seven definitions in one word. And I'm like, well, no wonder we can't explain this and identify this. The definitions we're giving make no sense. And some of them are like really scary. Like one of the definitions of death was slaughter. I'm like, well, that doesn't, sound any like jovial or like exciting thing to look forward to. It's like, I don't want to be slaughtered. No wonder people don't want to die. It's like, my God, these definitions are horrible. And then I go and I say, and I look and I'm like, well, what's a metaphysical definition?
Hmm.
And one of the sites that I found goes, well, metaphysics, they take and they use yoga theory where you transition from one state of being to another. I'm like, well, hell, that's one simple answer and sounds really cool versus nine or 10 of these things that some are sounding okay and some are sounding god awful. I'm like, huh, I'm glad I'm thinking this one and not those. Because holy
Right.
crap, it's like, God, if we ever thought about how we define things, it's no wonder, we react and think certain ways. Is the definitions we've been given, kind of force us to it. And it's like, ugh, oh my, ugh, yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to go on a tangent there.
No, you're fine. But it's the way that we're being trained. I mean, the way we're
Yeah.
being trained because we have no thought of that until we start school and all this others. And that's when we're start becoming trained as a single unit or molded or whatever you want to say with that, because we all have to think the same way. Um, so yeah, I mean, we got to start changing the death definition, and so that people don't have to be scared and know that they're going to be fine no matter what.
And one thing that I find interesting is when it comes to death, go to New Orleans because as dark and as twisted as that city is, and I'm sorry, in Las Vegas, I kind of feel like New Orleans is kind of the true city of sin with all the underground stuff that happens there.
Mhm.
But that aside, yeah, that was just a mental tangent. What one thing that I have seen and television shows bring light to it is when someone passes in New Orleans, families will hire bands and they will perform like a parade through the city. And I know that sounds really strange, to go, why are we parading someone dying? But that's not what it is. It's not a parade of someone dying. It's a celebration that someone lived and they're celebrating life. And in the indigenous tribes, life is celebrated. You're honored as you transition on. Culture started with celebrating life. I wish I knew where death went from celebrating life to being a termination and a finality and an end all be all because that is not what our original view of death ever was. And so that's something to think about, as sit there and you're processing everything we've talked about. Look at, this is what it truly started as, and this is what it's become. And we don't even know why it's become this. So, are we going to continue to blindly accept something that someone or something told us this is what it is versus what it truly was? Or are we going to revert back to what it truly was and start bringing back traditions of celebrating people instead of mourning they're gone?
Yeah. Yeah. I vote for celebration.
So do I. More rum and more alcohol, the better. No, I'm kidding. Let the real spirits flow. Yeah.
All right, have a
You know,
drink for me.
I know. And I often wonder, on a side note, I often find it interesting that alcoholic beverages are also known as spirits. You'll hear someone say, "Do you
Yeah.
want to, do you want a spirit?" And they're asking you if you want to drink. I find that so interesting in our vocabulary because I highly doubt anybody has really sat down and thought about why is an alcoholic drink referred to as a spirit?
But it could be deadly
Is it
because
though?
if you're an
Because
alcoholic, you I know a
well,
person that's passed from alcohol poisoning.
right,
So
but
there's
I will
that.
argue though, alcoholism is a choice. I know that becomes a point of argument because people are like, no, it's an addiction, and but an addiction is a choice in my viewpoint, in my opinion. Don't attack me for it. It's my own opinion. I'm not telling you what it is or isn't. And so, yeah, I viewpoint is alcohol is just fermented liquid. How you drink it, what you do with it is up to you, not the drink. The drink isn't sitting there and going, drink me. You, you've already had three of me. You know you want another. The drinks aren't talking to you. The drinks aren't emitting any energy, making you do anything. It's just sitting there in
Do you
true
think
reality.
do you think it could be something to do with like in the Bible where you have Jesus changing water to wine and that's the spirit of it changing into the alcohol?
That could be. I mean, it sounds reasonable. And in total honesty, I got nothing better, so I would say, yeah, let's go with that for until we find out something else and change our mind about where it comes from. But that's the beauty of thought, and our world is we have all these beliefs, but a belief is only a belief until we believe something else. And nobody forces you to believe one thing over another. But at the same time, there is, the factor I'm not gonna say I'm oblivious to is if your thought goes against mainstream society, mainstream society isn't gonna sit there and go, hey, I'm glad you think that. Okay, whatever. No, they're gonna try and bend you to their will. So
Mhm.
it's not an easy world to, always have your own thoughts in. create, your own environment because of outside factors. So, yeah, I'm not oblivious to that. And so, yeah, I mean, it sounds really nice, when we say what we're saying, but reality is, if it's a thought and an idea that mainstream people don't like, yeah, don't go public with it, in front of them and like spout it out and think everything's going to be hunky dory because it ain't. I'm sorry, we're not in that kind of world anymore where you can share ideas freely. You gotta use discernment and figure out where the appropriate place to share it is. And that's where I think shows like Dana's are really important in this world is, it gives an outlet for thoughts and ideas that most people may not be aware of or are afraid to speak because they don't want to put part of their life in jeopardy. And I know that sounds drastic to say, but it's true in a lot of cases that, you know, you share an idea and your livelihood could be at risk. Your life could be at risk. And it's a sad state of existence, but think of the courage that that person is showing by coming on shows and sharing it, knowing what could be on the other side of this information sharing and going, I'm not going to let that stop me. Or, my human will is stronger than that. And so I'm not going to let that stop me. I'm going to share. I'm going to, as long as I can, spout out my truth. And those that are willing to hear it will hear it. Those who aren't, I choose to believe they're going to just pass by the episode and not give a care and move on and won't ever, do anything about it. Is that hopeful thinking? Yeah. Is it reality? So far. So I'm going to keep holding to it until something happens that changes it. And then I'll, see where I go from there. But I have the nature of, you know, I'm not going to be silenced to cater to mass hysteria. If I don't believe something everybody believes, I'll find an outlet for it. Whether it's my show, somebody else's show, but it's always done in a respectful way, and that's where I think the difference is I'm not sitting here sharing my truth saying my truth is the truth.
Mhm.
It's my truth. Your truth is your truth.
Yep.
If our truths are in alignment, awesome. If our truths aren't in alignment, that's awesome too.
Yep.
More power to both, occurrences. But the respectful thing and the honorable thing is to just let each truth be what it is and don't force your truth on somebody else because then it loses its power and it loses its namesake of being a truth and it becomes something else, and that's where the toxic comes in is you're no longer sharing the truth. Now you're becoming the tyrant or the force that you don't want to be. And that's how I think, like, every hero we've ever seen that's fallen and become trapped into the darkness is always because they tried to force their truth on people instead of just letting it be.
Right. I totally agree. I agree with you. I think that's exactly how where our world is at right now, how it's gotten there is because we force each other, everybody else to believe in what they think. And then people get so confused and it just, it's too difficult to go about. So we just, you got to believe in your own truth, live your own
Exactly.
path, live your own truth, live your own life. Yeah. Well, buddy, we've been on for over almost 2 hours.
I know. I'm kind of surprised.
I'm not, but I love it. I love it still. Um, but I am so happy you came back on the show. I would love to have you back on again just because you have so many stories to tell. And we were talking beforehand, everyone, that he doesn't want to come on and repeat any stories. So we're trying to think, okay, what did we talk about?
Yeah.
So sorry if anything gets repeated, but I mean, it's if we do repeat it, it's probably because it's needed to be said again. It's needed to be said and to be aligned with somebody out there. So,
Well, and when I
um,
say repeated, I mean like if I talked about my experience at two, and then 3 episodes later, I shared the exact same story about what happened to me at two, and then 3 months later, I come back on and I'm doing the exact same story. It's like it's a repetitive story and it never changes, so people are going to get tired of hearing the same thing. However, if I share on episode one, say my experience at two, but then I have a new awareness of it and something, a new piece to it, then yes, I'll repeat, somewhat what's been told, but then I'll share the new piece and that makes it different. I don't like repeating the same material over and over with no changes. That's what I try to avoid in my shows. That's what I try to avoid doing in interviews is just repeating and regurgitating the same thing because there's no growth. I like to share stories that have growth and changes. And so if you hear me start to talk about a story and you're like, oh, I've heard this, chances are you may have heard the start, but not the second part. So, keep that in mind, as you're listening to shows, if something does start to repeat, you may find something different in it. And it's like, oh, and it could be minor, it could be major, who knows? But it's still a difference.
good pointers. Good pointers. Awesome. Yeah, I'm just thinking, okay. Yeah. So again, thank you again for coming on the show. Appreciate it. It's always a pleasure having you on. And
Yes, and thank you for giving me a platform to talk about this because it's something new and fresh on my mind. And like I said, I'm kind of working on a book around it too. And so it kind of is helping me get ideas flowing in congruency. And so it helps me as much as I hope helps everyone listening to it. And so thank you for giving me the space to not exactly do a paranormal talk, but still do a paranormal talk.
no, no, it's perfect. It's wonderful, because people are going through this all over the place. So I'm thankful that you're able to talk about it. And I want you to know that I'm here. If you ever do need to talk about it or, be emotional, it's all okay. It's a safe spot. So
Well, thank you.
I'm here for you.
I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Absolutely welcome. You have any last thoughts or anything for our viewers?
Let's see. What's a good last thought? Um, Only eat your veggies if you like them. No, just kidding. Um, I would say something that I live my life by, and is something that I've never been able to explain really why it's a part of me, but it is a part of me, is always live your life knowing there's hope around every corner and every situation, that you are never alone in this world at any time, and that hope that's drives you is a spark within you that can never be taken away. It's part of your human essence, it's part of your soul essence, it's part of your spirit essence, it's part of every essence that makes you who you are. And just know that nobody can take that from you. No matter how dark or harsh life seems, that hope is still there.
That's wonderful.
And
Yeah.
if you don't want to eat veggies, don't eat veggies.
Eat
There's
chocolate. Eat
hope for that
chocolate.
too.
Chocolate.
Hey, if that's what you're craving, go for it. I always say the body knows what it needs, so go for it. Don't judge it. To me, that's the worst thing you can do is eat something and then judge yourself for eating it instead of enjoying what you ate and knowing it's nourishing you somehow.
Like I say, eat chocolate. Eat chocolate. No. Just kidding. All right. If anyone else out there has any stories you would like to share, email me, lighttalk423@gmail.com. We'll talk with everybody next time. Bye.
Bye, everyone.